I'd like to welcome to the show now Assemblyman John Wisniewski, who is a Democrat from Middlesex County and is in the news quite a lot, especially recently. Well, no, I should say over the last couple of years for a couple of different topics. But let's start with topic number one, the reason you're in the news nowadays, the Transportation Fund. I want to start with the question of what condition are New Jersey roads, highways, and bridges in right now?
Deteriorating, not in the best shape. Getting worse every single day, and the significant reason for that is that we have not invested in the infrastructure the way we should. We've had capital programs over the past several years that have been $1.2, $1.6 billion, but we have to recognize that the experts about a decade ago, back in the McGreevey administration, had recognized that at that time, 10 years ago, we should be spending $1.2 billion a year just to keep the roads from falling apart. We've not kept up with that, and so with inflation at this point in time, each year we're not spending enough just to keep things where they should be. Forget about moving things to a place where they're even better.
Are we getting enough federal money?
Well, we get our share based on a formula, and the formula is based on the number of road miles, based on how many bus lanes and how many ferries we have, and it's also a function of how much money we have for our state match. We have to match the federal money. And so we don't compete well when you look at a state like California or a state like Texas that has many multiples of thousands of miles of roadway than we do. And so they just naturally get more. We do okay. Senator Lautenberg, when he was in the Senate and he was a champion for transportation funding, helped draft some of the formula that still exists today. We could always do better. But the real problem we have in New Jersey is our own investment, because if our Transportation Trust Fund does not have the money every year, we won't get the federal match. It'll go to somebody else.
Let me talk about the federal money for a second more before we move on to the state trust fund, because one of the mantras you hear over and over again is that New Jersey pays more into the federal fund than it's getting back, and that deficit should be closed.
That's true. I mean, we do pay more into the federal government than we get back, but it's never a dollar for dollar equation. And as much as we
get more.
Some states get more. I mean, we have to recognize that the states that get more largely are the states that are in far worse economic shape. I mean, New Jersey annually is 1 or 2 in national per capita income. And so that factors into how much money we get back. And the states that get the most are usually 39th, 40th, 50th in per capita income. And so I don't think any of us would want to change places with those states. Like, I'm not making excuses. We should always try and do better. We should always try and get more money. We have to recognize that there are a lot of different factors that go into the formulas that get us our share of federal money. But one thing's unmistakably clear: we get none if we don't have our own portion of the money to match against the federal money, and that's where the real crisis for New Jersey transportation funding is.
Let's get to the state transportation fund. I've heard in recent speeches, have called it a crisis.
It is
the fact
a crisis.
That we don't have the governor disagrees with you and says we are not at a crisis.
Well, you know, with deference to the governor, he'll cobble together enough money for the upcoming fiscal year to have a program.
Though, does it?
Well, when you use one-shot gimmicks that cannot be repeated, when you use money that is already borrowed, we borrowed this money last year, just didn't get around to spending it, you recognize that we have scraped the crumbs out of the cupboard, we have scraped the bottom of the barrel, and there is no money left after that. We are borrowing every single penny that we're spending for transportation funding. And we have to recognize that we already have to pay back $27 billion over the next 30 years to just get back to even. So digging that hole deeper to avoid having to confront the reality that we need to raise money from some source is really making the problem worse. I mean, the old adage is if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you ought to do is stop digging. In New Jersey, we're digging it even deeper because this governor does not want to address the reality that you have to raise money from some source. And if you're running for president of the United States and you have to go to states like Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire and talk to the conservative base there, being a guy that raises revenue is not somebody that gets elected. So
You said raising revenue. You're talking about raising
gas
taxes.
tax. Gas tax.
That's what he doesn't want to.
Right.
I don't think it's a secret that he wants to run for president. I don't think it's a secret.
It's not a secret.
That would not be a good thing in a Republican primary to raise taxes. But your critics say that you are out there now inventing a crisis because you want a 25-cent gas tax.
Well, I mean, look, there's nobody in elected office that wants to go out and say to his constituents, hey, I've got some bad news for you, and I've got a solution that's not popular. I mean, that's certainly not something that anybody wants to do, but we have to look at the pragmatic, the realistic facts that are in front of us. I mean, the governor often said that he wanted to be the grown-up in the room. He wanted to be the person that talked the truth. Well, the truth is we're out of money. The truth is that every single year for the last 4 years, we've been borrowing 100% of the money we spend on transportation funding.
Is that the only solution, though, having a
well,
gas tax?
You have to have money. All right? You can't continue to borrow money because you need a source to repay the money you're borrowing. Right now, if we do nothing else, every penny that we collect right now goes to pay the debt on the money we've already borrowed.
We will be back with Assemblyman John Wisniewski to talk about what he was making headlines before the Transportation Fund, the investigation into Bridgegate, when Jersey Matters continues.